And it's now time to turn to the next item of business. And the next item of business is an urgent question. In order to get as many people in as possible, I prefer short and succinct questions, as always, and answers to match. I call Stephen Kerr.
To ask the Scottish Government whether the Culture Secretary will correct the record regarding reports that he told a parliamentary committee that he had not been invited to attend a board meeting of Historic Environment Scotland, despite evidence to the contrary.
Cabinet Secretary Angus Robertson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and thank you to Stephen Kerr for his question. I was not aware of any such invitation when I attended the committee last week. Senior officials have now confirmed they had not advised me of the request from the former chair, as they were seeking to address a number of sensitive matters at Historic Environment Scotland prior to providing me with advice. Perhaps the most pressing sensitivity was that included in the ongoing investigations at Historic Environment Scotland was one into the conduct of the former chair, Dr Hugh Hall. Subsequent to his request, Dr Hall then indicated his resignation to the Scottish Government some months prior to the end of his term. This brought the investigation into his conduct to an end, and as a result, his request to meet the board was superseded.
Stephen Kerr.
Well, Presiding Officer, that is frankly nonsense. The Cabinet Secretary was invited to meet with the board of Historic Environment Scotland. Let's stick with the facts. That's what he was asked to do. The fact that he didn't know that he'd been invited is a separate matter that I will come to now. But let's be clear about one thing. The Ministerial Code requires that ministers give accurate and truthful information to Parliament and correct any errors at the earliest opportunity. Does the Cabinet Secretary accept he failed in that duty when he misrepresented the facts to the committee last week? Why did it take a set of courageous whistleblowers and a front-page newspaper story for him to act? And will he now apologise for the serious disservice he did to the Chair and Board of Historic Environment Scotland, and for undermining confidence in ministerial accountability?
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, and to Stephen Kerr for his follow-up question. I've discussed this matter with officials today. The reasoning that they outlined when I questioned why they did not notify me of the invitation sooner was to protect the independence of the investigation, and I understand that. In the interest of completeness, officials have today advised me Dr Hall requested meetings with the board on the 24th of July in a meeting, and by email on the 12th and the 29th of August. At this time, officials advised Dr Hall that, irrespective of a meeting, that I was fully engaged with matters at Historic Environment Scotland. Work has since moved on to supporting the efforts of the new Chair, Sir Mark Jones, to resolve the well-documented issues at Historic Environment Scotland, and appointing the two new interim board members to support Sir Mark, those being Ray McFarlane and Susan Dahan.
Stephen Kerr.
Presiding Officer, this episode has revealed a Cabinet Secretary completely out of touch with events inside his own office and within one of the most troubled public bodies in Scotland for which he has a responsibility. Does Angus Robertson not see that by throwing a senior civil servant under the bus to protect himself, he has done lasting damage to his own reputation? Will he accept that shifting blame onto officials is no substitute for competence, and that Parliament and the public deserve a minister who is on top of his brief, not one who seems incapable of managing it?
Cabinet Secretary.
Again, can I thank Stephen Kerr for his follow-up question. I take very seriously the issues that have been reported at Historic Environment Scotland. I'm very clear that, on the whole, HES is an excellent organisation with hard-working staff who look after one of this country's most valuable assets, its historic environment. Scottish officials have been working closely with the HES board and the HES leadership team to improve the leadership and governance at that organisation, and together with the appointment of Sir Mark, Ray McFarlane and Susan Dahan, along with a new Chief Operating Officer, I'm confident that HES will soon leave these issues behind it and go on from strength to strength.
I would advise members that we've received a number of requests for supplementaries. I'll try to get through all requests. I call Neil Bibby to be followed by Douglas Ross. Mr Bibby.
The serious issues at the top of Historic Environment Scotland are not of Angus Robertson's making, but it is his responsibility as Cabinet Secretary to give accurate answers to Parliament and to fix this mess. Historic Environment Scotland and the Cabinet Secretary appear to be all over the place, but the one place Angus Robertson hasn't been is in the boardroom of HES. This shambles cannot go on, and the Cabinet Secretary should not be waiting for an invitation to meet with the board of HES. When exactly will Angus Robertson do his job and meet with the board of Historic Environment Scotland?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, the answer to that question, to Neil Bibby's question, is quite simple, because I've made absolutely clear to Sir Mark that I'm happy to meet the board under his chairmanship whenever he feels the time is right. But I hope Mr Bibby agrees that it's right for us, hopefully, to support the incoming chair of the board, to support his leadership of Historic Environment Scotland. He has to get to grips with a lot of issues at an arm's length body. And I would wish to assure Mr Bibby that I've told Sir Mark that he has my total support, and that is why I have appointed 2 new interim board members to strengthen the team around him, that there should be a new Chief Operating Officer at Historic Environment Scotland, and the assurance that I will give him any support that he needs. That is a position of the Scottish Government. I hope Neil Bibby supports that as well.
I call Douglas Ross, followed by Paul McLennan.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I do not believe what the Cabinet Secretary has told Parliament. I simply do not believe him. But if we are to believe his argument that he didn't know anything about these requests, what action is he taking to investigate civil servants who have withheld information from a Cabinet Secretary? And does he believe that the reason that has been withheld from him is because of the concerns we have heard from members of his party and his government that he is a lazy minister who is not across the detail of his brief?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, can I make clear that I've asked officials why they did not share the information with me, and whilst I understand their reasoning, I've been very clear that going forward I am to be kept informed of any such requests in a timely fashion. But in answer to the question that's been posed to me, the level of engagement between the Scottish Government and Historic Environment Scotland in relation to their problems of governance as an arm's-length organisation is extremely serious, and we are very, very closely involved in being supportive of Historic Environment Scotland under the new chairmanship of their board to make sure that they emerge from the challenges of their own making and make sure that it is able to perform the functions that I hope that all of us across this chamber believe is their core business.
Can I take this opportunity to remind all members that we have to listen to the member who has the floor, and we don't need running commentaries or heckling from sedentary positions. I call Paul McLennan to be followed by Jamie Halker-Johnson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The quality, protection and care of Scotland's heritage and history are at the heart of this, and it's essential that Historic Environment Scotland has the trust and confidence of the public in this regard. Can the Cabinet Secretary say any more about how the Scottish Government is working alongside the new Chair to ensure this is restored as swiftly as possible? Cabinet Secretary.
Well, Paul McLennan asks a very important question, and those relate to the issues that I've already narrated to Neil Bibby. We need to make sure that Historic Environment Scotland, under new leadership, has the resources at its disposal to deal with the issues that have come to public attention in Historic Environment Scotland and its leadership. That's why I've been very supportive, and my officials have been very supportive, in making sure that they have the capacity to deal with the challenges that they're trying to deal with. That has included the appointment of a new chairman of the board, which I have undertaken. That has involved the naming and appointment of 2 new interim board members, which I have undertaken, and has been in providing support that can provide a Chief Operating Officer for Historic Environment Scotland. These are the interventions that are appropriate for government to make sure that they are able to deal with the problems that exist in Historic Environment Scotland and can see them move on to deal with it as an organisation, the key role that they perform in our country.
I call Jamie Halker-Johnson to be followed finally by Craig Coy. Mr Halker-Johnson.
The Cabinet Secretary was quite definite in his response to both myself and to Stephen Kerr in committee that he has neither attended nor that he's been invited to attend any HES board meeting, despite his predecessor Fiona Hislop doing so and despite knowing that the organisation was in crisis. However, we now know that Angus Robertson claims are not true. there was at least one invitation to attend a board meeting. Stephen Kerr has written to the First Minister, urging him to refer Angus Robertson to the First Minister's independent adviser on the Ministerial Code. So can I ask Mr Robertson, has he spoken with or been in communication with the First Minister about that letter from Mr Kerr, or about the potential of this incident being investigated by the First Minister's independent adviser on the Ministerial Code as a breach of that code? Or will Angus Robertson refer himself and save the First Minister having to make that decision?
Cabinet Secretary.
Can I say to the member, I've already answered the substantive point that he raises in relation to the first answer that I provided to Stephen Kerr. I was not aware of the invitations to the board, and the record will show that to be the case. What I think is more, well, it's up to other people if they wish to launch investigations, take part in investigations, call for investigations. I know that's the job of opposition parties
Mr.
to do that.
Lumsden.
As far as what I need to do, I need to make sure that the leadership, the new leadership of Historic Environment Scotland, has the resources at its disposal to get itself through the difficult process that it is needing to do as an arm's-length body, and that is what I'm undertaking to do as Cabinet Secretary.
And I call Craig Hoy.
What does the Cabinet Secretary think his negligence says to the communities, for example, in Durlton and in Melrose, where Hess properties are still surrounded by Harris fencing? And isn't it the case that if the Minister spent more time on his day job and less time adding to his air miles, he might be able to finally fix these problems?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, I think Mr Hoy is, I hope he is, aware that the operational management of Historic Environment Scotland is for Historic Environment Scotland. I share with him the wish that our historic sites are able to be open, and that's why this government has provided Historic Environment Scotland with the funds. It's only a shame that Mr Hoy voted against that in the budget.
Thank you, Cabinet Secretary. That concludes the urgent question. I would say to members that I am minded to accept a motion without notice under Rule 11.2.4 of Standing Orders that decision time be brought forward to now. I would invite the Minister for Parliamentary Business to move the motion.
Move, Presiding Officer.
Thank you. The question is that decision time be brought forward to now. Are we all agreed? Yes. We are agreed. There are two questions, in fact, to be put as a result of today's business. The first question is that motion 19613, in the name of Richard Lochhead, on UEFA European Championship Scotland Bill at Stage 1 be agreed. Are we all agreed? Yes. The Parliament is agreed. The motion is therefore agreed. The final question to be put is that motion 19614, in the name of Angela Constance, on motion on legislative consent on the Border Security, Asylum and Immigration Bill, UK legislation, be agreed. Are we all agreed? Yes. The Parliament is not agreed. There will be a short suspension to allow members to access the digital voting system.